Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 21st of August, 2024, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. Joining me in the studio today with Charles Mallett. Welcome to the programme, Charles.
Thank you, Mike.
And from Damascus, Vanessa Bealey is joining us as well. Now, we're going to get kicked off today, Charles, with yacht sinkings and other coincidences.
Yes, we are. Good afternoon, all. Yes, this is the news that within very close proximity to each other, two co-defendants of a case that's just been to trial in America have respectively been killed and gone missing. On the left, we see the BBC reporting the death of Stephen Chamberlain, formerly of Autonomy and then Invoke Capital and associated with Darktrace, which we're going to come on to talk about, hit by a car in Cambridgeshire on Saturday. And then on Monday, the yacht belonging to Mike Lynch was reportedly overturned in a harbour off Sicily. Also on board, Jonathan Bloomer of Morgan Stanley and their solicitor, Christopher Morvillo. Now, of course, at first sight, this does seem like a coincidence beyond credibility, but what it does do is to shine a spotlight on not just the court case that had closed, but also the other activities that they respectively had been involved with. So if we go back to the court case itself, which concerned the suggestion that there had been a fraudulent inflation of the price of Autonomy, which was founded by Lynch, and indeed Chamberlain worked there at the company with him. It was sold to Hewlett-Packard, and the fraud allegation has just been quashed, in effect, by a federal court in San Francisco. So the sort of celebration aboard the yacht named Bayesian, which of course is worth mentioning because it refers to a statistical branch of mathematics predicting future outcomes on past events, in effect. But this is giving us a further look at what they did with the proceeds of the sale of Autonomy to Hewlett-Packard, which was to put the money into a company called Invoke Capital, with which they were able to set up other businesses. And I should just draw your attention to what it says on the front page of their website, which is that Invoke exists to realise the commercial possibilities of Britain's extraordinary science and deep technology base. So commercial possibilities are the critical part of this entire story, it would seem. So with funding from Invoke Capital, a cybersecurity company called Darktrace was set up in 2013. The headline there from the Darktrace website: Invoke Capital makes first investment in fundamental cybersecurity technology. Now, it wasn't terribly long after, at least this is the first sort of report of it on the Darktrace website, that the UK government signed a multi-million-dollar contract with Darktrace. Now, interestingly, the UK government is quite quiet about this. Very difficult to find any reference to Darktrace specifically on the government website, but nonetheless, it's going back a tiny bit to 2016. There was an award, a Queen's Award, given to Darktrace for what's described as their enterprise immune system. So just to get into the nuts and bolts of what Darktrace actually does, or at least says that it's capable of, and it concerns what's called pattern of life. So it concerns artificial intelligence. So it says it's powered by AI algorithms, and the enterprise immune system works by learning the pattern of life of each user and device across the entire digital infrastructure. Using this evolving understanding of normal, Darktrace spots emerging threats and autonomously responds to in-progress attacks before they do damage. But of course, we have to consider the type of threat and the type of damage. Are we talking about threat to government and population or corporate interests? And this is the line that we need to understand better. They go on to say that it's powered by machine learning and mathematics, and it was developed by specialists from the University of Cambridge and intelligence from former MI5 and GCHQ experts. Darktrace's self-learning technology is able to monitor network activity and detect threats as they develop, which helps companies get ahead of the threats. Now, of course, with a capability like that, it's no great surprise that they go on to say that some of the world's largest corporations rely on Darktrace's self-learning technology in sectors including energy and utilities, financial services, telecommunications, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, and transportation. So, of course, with all of this in mind, first of all, Darktrace seems to be suggesting that they can predict outcomes based on their monitoring and surveillance of people and the way that they use devices in particular. Now, should we be concerned, therefore, that this is an arrangement that government have gone into, specifically because, of course, Invoke Capital, which has funded Darktrace and indeed has involved Lynch and Stephen Chamberlain, has, of course, declared that their chief concern here are the commercial possibilities for the organisation. Now, the other connection that I want to draw your attention to is that Darktrace describes CrowdStrike as being a Darktrace technology partner. And of course, CrowdStrike was responsible, shall we say, for an enormous IT outage recently due to an update, or at least so the story goes, an update that in fact brought several technologies to a standstill. But they say that they stop breaches, they power productivity, technology, intelligence and expertise come together in our industry-leading CrowdStrike Falcon platform to deliver security that works. And then we look at the government website. Of course, the government, in effect, selling CrowdStrike products there. We can see that's £120 for a virtual machine on what they're calling their Falcon platform. So the CrowdStrike, of course, partnered with Darktrace, which is funded by an organisation that specifically is set up to further commercial interests or commercial possibilities. And now we look at who's actually involved with Darktrace, of course, apart from Lynch himself and Chamberlain, who had come from Autonomy and Invoke Capital. But we see, first of all, in terms of sort of profile, Jonathan Evans, and we look at his background, former Director General of MI5, where he spent 33 years focusing on internal and domestic counter-terrorism and cyber threats. And this is very much a pattern, one might say. We've also got the ex-CIA official Alan Wade, who is described as being the chief information officer of the CIA, who's joined the board of advisors. Now, this has been written about in the past by Declassified UK in an article back from 2020 saying how Britain's profiteering spy masters ignored the country's biggest threats like coronavirus and endangered the public. Now, they're not actually suggesting that coronavirus was the country's biggest threat. The point they're making is that the government was talking about it as though it was the biggest threat, and yet they weren't dealing with it in the same way that they were other things. So the key phrase from the declassified article is revolving door. And they go on to say that the revolving door between government and industry is meant to be regulated for conflicts of interest by the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments. However, Declassified can find no evidence that an intelligence chief has ever had an ACOBA application rejected. This allows them to lobby their old agencies on behalf of their private interests after they leave office. So we'll just have a look at the detail of that. Specifically, we've talked about Jonathan Evans. So the letter that concerned his appointment back from 2013 said that it was approved on a dual condition, that he should not draw on privileged information available to him from his time in Crown service. They felt it was especially pertinent in this case, given the sensitive nature of his job, and also the need to avoid the perception that Darktrace was gaining an unfair advantage due to it. And then also from 2 years from his last day of service, he should not become personally involved in lobbying the UK government on behalf of his new employer, and they go on to say its parent company or its clients. So the accidents that have befallen these two men have either by design or not, brought into the public domain now an awful lot of information. There's still going to need to be picked through in some considerable detail to see exactly, first of all, what has happened to them, how it did happen. I mean, it does seem coincidence, absolutely, as I said at the outset, beyond credibility. There will be all sorts of wild speculations, one shouldn't doubt. But really, to examine the relationship between government and corporation and where those relationships overlap in terms of a united desire to pursue civilian populations by means of monitoring and surveillance in order to predict behaviour and therefore control it. So there's an awful lot more that's going to come out of this story, one imagines.
Indeed. And Vanessa, once again, it highlights the very tight links between cybersecurity, companies and intelligence agencies. And we've been highlighting connections to Unit 8200 with so many of these. But it's not just Israeli intelligence, it's other Western intelligence agencies as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, that's a very important aspect of what we're talking about to keep an eye on for the future.